one thing, and speaking of being bounded by past and things, if I'm honest, I always think about songwriting and performing songs, and would I be able to do it with my grandpa in the audience?
This is Champaign is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign, Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign, Urbana music scene, past or present. Champaign is Also a Band podcast is a member of the Champaign Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. Today, I'm here with Cole Bridges, and you may know Cole from such bands as my brother, Harrison, Elsinore, The Annas, The Fights, and Primitive Lights. Oh, and you also will know Cole in his project with Cole Bridges and The Overpass.
Yeah.
Cole, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me in.
Today, we're going to be listening to your song, Never Been Dirty, which we just recorded in the studio, and this is a yet unreleased song. Let's just have a listen to it.
Let's do it.
Got a metal detector out walking the yard. I've been following beeps every morning till dark. I found a buffalo quarter and a knob for a door, old rings of keys and some other things. I just don't know what they're for, but I keep digging more holes and scratching old scars, 'cause I need something to do, and I don't work on cars. I left my love in a bed, well, it must have been for 2 years or more, till that telltale heart got too bored and popped itself through the floor. And then she packed all the clothes and just walked out my door. Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up when you ain't never been dirty, but you still don't feel clean? Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up? No, you ain't never been dirty, but you still don't feel clean. Tell me, what does it mean? Give me a flat in the city or a shack in the country, a farm by my hometown, you know, anywhere really. Just make it something surprising, not like dust on a shelf, 'cause you can drive yourself batty, hide and seek in oneself, 'cause you can hide in a corner. Yeah, you can hide in a barn. Yeah, you can hide in a field, but you'll never get far from the voice in your head, like an overflowing cup. Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up when you ain't never been dirty, but you still don't feel clean? Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up? No, you ain't never been dirty, but you still don't feel clean. Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up? Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up? Tell me, what does it mean to feel so washed up?
Welcome back. And I guess, as is my favorite question to always ask, is, does the music come first or do the words come first when you write songs?
Well, up until very, very recently, it's always been words first for me. Just recently was able to, I don't know if able to is the right word. I've just never really think about writing songs very much unless it's about sitting down and writing some words. I guess that's where my need or want to make music comes from, or I guess it's specifically songwriting comes from wanting the story to be there first. But that being said, the tune I wrote recently where I did the music first, that was also a lot of fun. It just, I don't think I think musically too much. I think more lyrically, if that makes sense.
I mean, I would almost say the narrative quality about all that I've noticed in all of your songs is evident that you have a story from beginning to end, and you're trying to convey like an event in some ways, your stories from your life or whatever. Would you say that a majority of the songs that you write are specifically autobiographical, or would you say that they're observational? Or
at the core, it's autobiographical. Even if there's mixed metaphors and things in there, I think it all kind of ties back something that's going on in my old noggin. But I think more recently, post playing with the Fights and playing in that band, I'm trying to reassess my motives for songwriting and my motives for playing music. If that means I'm going to write more storytelling type songs that don't necessarily have me as a focal point as an individual, or maybe depending on how I'm feeling, if it needs to be a song that I feel is very personal and autobiographical, I don't really have rules about it, but I think for a long time there I was writing songs that, for better or worse, kind of focused on what I was dealing with as a real person.
Yeah.
But it's been fun lately to try to reimagine that a little bit and take myself out of it a little bit more, if that's possible.
Why do you feel it's important to step beyond just your own personal experience and your own narrative?
Like I said, reimagining or reassessing what it is that I even want to do musically or play musically. I think what I've come to lately is an understanding and a respect that when I'm going to write a song, it's to be shared with other people. If I am going to share it with other people, what do I want our shared experience to be? Like, not what do I need this song to be for myself, but if other people are going to hear it too, why do they care about, or why should they, or do they care about me as the person and what I'm dealing with in my day-to-day? Or is it maybe just lately I've been feeling like it'd be more fun to try to write where the story was more communal, or the story was maybe not so much that old experience of let's go see a show or listen to music and just listen to music and think like, oh, that person with the microphone, it's about them. This is about that person.
Right.
Like I don't want to feel that way. And I feel like I spent a little too much time maybe focusing on trying to define myself through stories in my songs, trying to control the narrative about what kind of person I am, maybe, if that makes sense. It's sort of like a subconscious thing. That was never like some sociopathic, manipulative thing I was trying to pull off, but I think maybe subconsciously that happens a lot in songwriting, and I'm trying to check myself a little bit.
That's really interesting, because I think some of the more universal tunes or lyrics tend to be ones that are simple, and when you're more specific about your own life, you may potentially lose that universal. Is that what I'm kind of hearing from you?
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, it's just, like I said, how I've been feeling lately, and wanting to kind of keep that in check a little bit, all in the spirit of sharing it with other people and letting other people who care to listen to my songs live or otherwise, like, I want them to be in on it too. Try to avoid the old guy with a guitar.
So with that all in mind, how do you think that this song, Never Been Dirty, fits into that spectrum?
I think it's it fits in with this new spirit in the sense that, right off the bat, it's just kind of, I guess, about a person with a metal detector, which one I don't own.
Okay.
So it's just more of a story. It feels more like a fictional story, at least to start. By the end, I can't help but get myself in there a little bit, but I like to think it's just sort of it paints more of a picture, and hopefully not a picture of me in the listener's mind. I hope it can be themselves. It can be anyone.
I have to know who you are to know that this is not you, right? In some ways.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, it seems reasonable that you may have, had a relationship that there is some debate as to whether who left whom, but really she left you,
Well, I feel like that just the fact that there's question about it, it allows the listener to sort of fill in the gaps a little bit more, Yeah. And it can be more of their own story, whatever they want it to be personally with the tune. And like the line you just referenced about a relationship coming to an end, and I do indeed use the word she. I kind of think about it as she, as in like naming your ship or your guitar or your gun or something, like,
right.
Because for, if it were to be a strictly autobiographical tune, like, just in my case, it's more about my relationship with music. I think this song has a lot to do with my relationship with music and playing music and performing and things like that. But
that's interesting.
But
yeah.
But I like to know that other people might hear it and just be like, oh, that's that one person who I had a falling out with, or whatever. It can be right. It can be whatever.
I guess I was thinking most of the day, and I had a weird correlation as, of course, I'm vacuuming the stairs. Maybe even my own quest in terms of how to interpret some of these things. I was thinking about the concept of clean, and I don't know, as I was cleaning, how
yeah,
how sure. Genius. I was thinking as I'm cleaning the stairs, I'm like, well, the fact that I clean these stairs, no one's actually going to notice that these stairs are clean. Mm-hmm. It's just, they're just not dirty, right?
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, like, what things do we do to ourselves that it's like, it's not actually this process of being clean. It's just a process of not being dirty, because nobody notices whether you're clean or not. It's just, they just notice when it's dirty. I mean, let's go back to that. Would you call that your chorus? Would you say
sure.
that? Tell me what does it mean to feel so washed up? The line is to feel so washed up, not to be so washed up.
Yeah.
Which I always feel like that's something that happens to me as I get older, as I'm like instead of seeing myself as someone that's constantly improving or has room for improvement, I feel like it's more and more feeling washed up than being washed up, and I don't know if that's,
I think that's for sure an important distinction. And then it leaves the question of like, what is this feeling, what does this mean to feel this way? And then it's a choose your own adventure, I guess. You get to
yeah,
everybody gets to decide what that feeling means and what you're going to do about it. I think maybe we could both agree it's not a nice feeling to feel over it or washed up or whatever one might say. But I think it is important to understand that that's not what you are or what I am or what anyone is, like everybody's got the chance, hopefully the opportunity to self-evaluate and make changes where necessary.
Nice.
So yeah, I do think that's important. I'm glad that you said that.
When I read the line, when you ain't never been dirty, somehow my mind always goes to the thought of you've never really had a real job unless you've gotten dirt under your nails. Is something that I always think about, is like, if you've never really had that opportunity to work so hard that you get blisters, that you have dirt under your nails, that you just, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the be all end all sense of existence, but I feel like those that don't get that opportunity may never appreciate getting a really honest day's work kind of feel. And then to like balance that off with but you still don't feel clean. You know, I'm like, well, maybe it's just because you've never gotten the opportunity to be dirty.
I kind of think about it in two ways, I guess. Thinking about just the feeling of being washed up. I guess it all kind of ties back to that and has a little fun with that language, you know? Like, feeling washed up, we don't necessarily think about that as a term that means you're clean. Washed up, especially in like a music community, means like you're just over the hill and like you ain't relevant anymore or whatever. So that's more of the starting point for that process for me. And I think never been dirty, it kind of means, for me, something to the effect of, I haven't ever really gotten to a point where I was so caught up in my musical life that you could say I've been washed up. I'm going to put it in a little bitty nutshell, and it's, if you've never been relevant to begin with, then how the heck are you going to feel like you're relatively irrelevant? So that's kind of that on one level. And then another level, just sort of like, I can't help but hear words like dirty and clean without thinking about drugs or drinking or something like that, you know? And me personally, you know, I like to have fun, but I've never had too much trouble as far as bad habits. It kind of ties into the bigger picture of a folk, Americana, country songwriting too. I think people like to present a very hard image sometimes. And, you know, I think that's all kind of just bullshit. Like, I mean, some people do live hard and great. That's cool. I don't like playing into those tropes of country songwriting where I'm not trying to seem like I'm some badass, you know.
You know, like Chris Gaines.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's kind of another aspect of the whole dirty clean line. And it's like, so if I haven't been struggling with habits or addiction or anything like that, but I still like don't feel clean, then like, what is this that I'm hung up on? Like, what is standing in the way of that sweet release of cleanliness? So that's kind of where my headspace is at with that.
Even though you say that it's not necessarily autobiographical, there is a tone of familiarity, I think, that you try to convey, that's very warm. I don't know, it's like an invitation.
Well, I guess in the spirit of talking about this song, and like I said earlier, it's like I couldn't help but get myself in there a little bit by the end. Like, the first verse to me is this more image-rich, fun character fellow who's out walking around his yard with a metal detector, and then by the end, by the second verse after the first chorus, there's kind of just this like very flat, like, you know, give me this or give me that, or you know, whatever. And I guess that to me feels maybe a little bit more autobiographical in the context of this song, definitely.
Did you actually start off with the idea and concept of a metal detector first, or had you started with another verse first? I don't know. I feel like there are definitely these three sections, and they're tied together, but they're not. They're different kinds of stories that get brought together. Was the metal detector the first part?
I think it was. With this song, actually, this was only the second time that I've done this, but I had a day at work where I was usually at work over the years. I've spent a lot of time alone, whether that was at a workbench or out in a field, or I'm alone a lot. And so I feel a lot of time listening to music or listening to podcasts, just so I'm not like out there alone with my thoughts all day, every day, all year, because I drive myself crazy. There's been a couple of times, and this is the second time with this song, where I didn't listen to anything and I just started the day and I kind of let my thoughts form the lyrics for the tune, and like line by line the story just built all throughout my workday. And then by the time I got home, I had in my mind like recited the words so many times that I had it memorized. And so then when I got home, I would write it down and then I would put it to music. Well, the story or this song, whatever you want to call it, like it formed itself line by line in my imagination all day while I was at work.
Wow. Yeah.
So I mean, I couldn't tell you why I thought about a metal detector or whatever, but I do dig an awful lot of holes at work, so that probably has something to do with it.
To me, yes, there's that line about feeling so washed up, like you may not be as relevant as you once were, or you may be out of touch, that kind of feeling. But what comes out in each of these sections, the verses, is that searching, is that trying to find something new and exciting, but yet being bound by the past.
Yeah, I think whether it's this song or any other song I've ever written, probably has something to do that you could trace back to, what you said.
Gotcha.
Cliff notes of my songwriting.
Yeah, I mean, like, even if you're just like, oh, you know what, I can live wherever the hell I want. It's just like, that's fine, anywhere. And then, you can hide in a field, but you'll never get far from the voice in your head, like an overflowing cup. Something new and wonderful is bound by our sense of the past, where it's like we limit ourselves by what we've been through rather than limit ourselves by what we can be.
It almost plays with the whole grass is always greener kind of thing. Like, well, if I'm feeling stuck and I just want something different, then, you could go to a city or you could go to country or farm, whatever. If there's a moral to it, hopefully it can come across that it's got to be an inside job at first. Like the work is, you're never going to feel free unless you can get in there and do the work to free yourself from those limitations like you were talking about, or free yourself from the past, not to forget it, but to understand it in such a way where it's no longer feeling like a big old weight on you. And that's not to say that I've achieved that, because I sure as shit have not. but it's a hopeful thought. I think it's a goal to be able to understand oneself well enough to the point that you can love yourself and be at peace. I think for me, it has a lot to do with aging, and like I said, my relationship with music, and being in the process of trying to reevaluate all of that and reassess it and reframe, like, what does this mean to me? I've found that I have to kind of, quote unquote, maybe not care as much, but that doesn't mean that it's not important. It's just I have to allow myself to respond differently to music than I used to. I used to hold on so tight and get so upset about this or that, or just driving myself crazy. And I'm not going to let myself do that anymore, not because I don't care about it, but because that's just not a healthy way to interact with a thing that you love. One thing, and speaking of being bounded by past and things, if I'm honest, I always think about songwriting and performing songs, and would I be able to do it with my grandpa in the audience? And that's not, I don't use that as a tool. That's not something that I think is a good idea, but if I'm honest, that thought is always in my head. Yeah. Because it has a lot to do with, like, just, I don't know, my insecurities, about being accepted by family and things. But it's always there. And I think when I think about, it's sort of like what I was saying about, like, wanting to share songs with people, like the idea is for the song to be shared. I think maybe there was a point where I was writing songs where I was like, well, I'm going to share it, but I'm going to share it with these types of people. I'm going to share it with people who are more or less just like me, or, share similar beliefs and feelings and highs and lows, whatever. But more recently, I feel myself wanting to let grandpa in the bar. Like, I want to be able to sit there and play songs that everyone can find some meaning in, or find nice. And if it was me being drunk and yelling a song that I wrote 7-8 years ago, like, I would be, grandpa would hate it.
Right. Well, yeah.
And like I said, I don't think all songs have to be written for grandpa, but just where I'm at more so lately. I'm hoping that it can be more relatable to anyone, and I don't, like we were saying, I don't want it to be like some sort of performance piece where I just go up and show how upset or worked up I can get, because then it's just, again, like, back to that thing of, like, the performer is that person on stage with the microphone, they are them. We're out here on the floor or whatever, like, not a part of it. We're all just here to celebrate the presence of that person. And I don't want it to be that so much anymore. Not that it ever was too much, hopefully, but that's where I'm wanting to be.
Do you feel like that was kind of your role in the Annas? Because I've saw you a few times while you were playing with the Annas, or as you were the Annas.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Annas, there's a lot going on then. I think the nature of that band, I wanted to be in a punk rock band. I wanted to be in a punk rock band, but that's as edgy as I could get. Was writing those kinds of songs about as edgy as I could pull off, I think, and not be totally full of it.
I Ain't Scared seems to be, to me, like spoke to that, talking to your past in a way, because in some ways that, does speak to that past, but also kind of confronts the things of the past. So anyway, listeners, go ahead and check out that song as well. Cause,
I think that's a good point, and I think it kind of fits into the context of this larger musical evolution that we're kind of talking about. That's an example of a tune that was very literal and very autobiographical. And not to think that I'm the only person who has had those kinds of relationships or things to work through with their family, but it was very much, me literally writing to my mom and my dad in that song. And I knew they were going to hear it because they're the kind of parents who are going to listen to what I do, for better or worse. And yeah, I couldn't shake the thought of writing songs and not address the elephant in the room with them and some of that stuff.
Right.
But so that's the kind of thing that I did do, and I think it served a purpose, and I'm proud of it. But I also am not going to write a tune like that in the foreseeable future because it's just too much about me. I think I'm just bored with myself, maybe.
Oh, man. You should write a song about how you're so bored with yourself.
Oh, yeah?
I think that could be interesting.
I think this one could fit under that category.
I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to mention about this song, or if any fun little facts or weird things that came up, or...
Well, I guess in this, being a fan of your podcast, I know you like to have the person come on and pick a song that they might consider their favorite or one that they're proud of. And this song for me, and I think it's always been this way, where the song that I'm into the most is going to be the one that I wrote most recently.
Yeah. Because
it just sort of is where my headspace is and where I'm at. So it's the one that's doing me good at that time.
Yeah.
Not to say that as time moves on, I end up hating them all or whatever, but this being a very recent song for me, it just feels fresh and it feels good. And so thanks for letting me throw you a curveball and want to record it in your studio.
Sure.
and then talk about it.
Champaign is also a band. Podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week. They can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. So, Cole, you've been in the Champaign-Urbana area for how long?
Since the fall of 2006. So that's, 13 years.
Was it music that drew you to this area to begin with, or?
To be completely honest, I moved here just as it was a complete fluke. I didn't know anything about Champaign-Urbana. I grew up in Southern Illinois, a few hours south of here, and I had graduated high school and basically didn't have any plans or ambition to do anything other than play music. That wasn't sitting too well with my folks. So I had to figure out something. And I have an older brother who was moving up here to go to the U of I. He had completed community college down south, and then was moving here to get his bachelor's or whatever. As an older brother who really, certainly at that time, was not very close with at all. He just threw it out there like, hey, you can move to Champaign. There's a community college there. It pleased everybody. I got to move away from home, which at that time I desperately wanted to do. I had a girlfriend at the time in Chicago, so it split the difference between me and her.
Right. Yes.
I got a little closer. Parents were satisfied. I was going to a community college and had an apartment with my older brother, and that's how I ended up here. Yeah, the first night that I was ever in Champaign, we stayed in the La Quinta Inn by 74. And then I went to Parkland College, so that night, it was nighttime, and we drove to Parkland, so we just took Neal Street to Bradley all the way out to Parkland, at nighttime, and that was my introduction to Champaign. I was like, well, I guess I live here now.
Yeah. How did you discover that there was a music scene here?
To tie it into that story of being at the hotel by the interstate, they had a copy of, I guess it was The Buzz, the campus's newspaper, weekly paper, and mostly entertainment-based stuff. Being from a small farm town in southern Illinois and having always been a musician, just seeing something like that, seeing something like The Buzz, and then opening it up and seeing that people were talking about music and that there was a calendar for live music. I've certainly had never lived in a place that had anything like that. And it's funny because I remember Seth Fine was writing at that time. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Buzz in the era where Seth was writing? And I can't remember what it was called. He had a column though. And anyway, Seth Fine was a writer. Michael Coulter was a writer. But like Seth was talking about a downtown festival and how I can't remember the facts or details, but like he mentioned the Headlights, who I'd never heard of before. But he was talking about how it was important to incorporate local original music into the city's events and things like that. And like that was like crazy talk coming where I was coming from, and I thought it was like some of the most radical shit ever. Just the thought that there was a newspaper where you were allowed to say things like that. It kind of immediately gave me a good impression that there were people who were working. There was somebody writing about local music. There was a band called Headlights that was local. So I immediately, from my stay at the hotel, knew that something was going on. So that was a good sign. And then shortly after moving here, I went to Mike Ingram's open mic night at the Cowboy Monkey religiously. I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and I would just go, and I would sign the list, and I would have to wait. Like, say the bar closed at 2, I would get to play at 1:50, and I would just play a couple of songs, and it was like, playing on a stage, having a nice sound system, playing to a room of strangers. It was the most exhilarating thing that I could have been doing.
So had you been doing that before?
I had bands in high school. I always played in bands, and I had been writing songs for a while. I'd certainly performed, and I grew up not all that far from St. Louis, so we would go to St. Louis sometimes and play, and I would see concerts over there. So I wasn't like completely oblivious to how independent music worked, but to be able to participate was a new thing for me, for sure.
Do you have a favorite Champaign-Urbana venue?
I frequent the Loose Cobra and the Rose Bowl, the Iron Post too. Like those 3 bars, I think I've always felt real comfortable at. I think they do a good job of respecting live music when they do have it, making it an integral part of their business, and also treating people nice, when you're there to play. The Loose Cobra could be just a little bit bigger. There could be a little more room in front of the stage. Yeah. But you can't, there's pros and cons everywhere. You could pick them apart.
But that's also kind of what makes it special too. Is it's cramped, but it's like you and maybe 25 other people get to be that close to these great bands.
Well, sure. Matt is one of the best at treating musicians well, as far as just thanking them and being nice to them and doing what he can as far as the money front goes. Loose Cobra, Rose Bowl, those are definitely a couple favorites of mine. Yeah.
Is there a concert that you've seen in Champaign-Urbana that's just just stands out in your head as like the most amazing show or your favorite or...
Well, like sort of like I was saying about songs, usually my favorite song is the one that's most recent. So I'll try to think of something I saw not too long ago. I was really moved by the Bottle Rocket show at Rose Bowl recently. I don't know if you did. Were you at that?
Yeah.
Okay,
I came to see Angie Heaton.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, well, I guess I'll see.
We talked that night. We talked before we played. I know you were there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
By the end of the night, there were a lot of folks there. But that felt really, really special to me. It seemed to be kind of a landmark show for the bar in terms of its new ownership and management.
Yeah.
And a band like the Bottle Rockets, who usually play venues that are much larger than that, for it to work out where they said yes, they're going to play it. All these people showed up, most of whom the Bottle Rockets fans are rural people from everywhere. So it's like all these folks showed up and filled the bar, and I didn't recognize a lot of people, which is always fun, Not there's certainly nothing wrong with being at a show where you know everybody, but it feels exciting when you don't know everybody,
Yeah.
And for it to sell out the bar that night and to know like it sounded so good. Those guys have done a lot of work to improve the sound system since they've taken over, to have it sound so good. And kudos to Bob for always doing a good job on sound. But that just felt like it made me really happy to be there that night, and I felt a lot of joy just being in Urbana, seeing a world-class band sound really good in this old honky-tonk bar that my friends own now. Like it felt really nice. And I mean, it's always a treat to play with Angie too, so I'm glad it worked out that we got to be on that bill.
Those two fit very, very well together. And I feel like most of the people that would go and see the Bottle Rockets would either they're familiar with Angie's work or they would like Angie's work. I feel like they fit really well together. Granted, I love Angie's work, but I also love the fights and always have loved the fights. So I love this combination. It's like, why did my mind just go there? I'm like, it's kind of like when you've had two good friends for a really long time and all of a sudden they start dating. It's perfect, right?
Well, Angie keeps trying to date Clayton. He just won't go for it.
Yeah, I was super excited to see that combination at the Hogshoot Opry. So.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not an official venue, but you can't help but acknowledge that the Hogshoot is always a favorite event, both like as a spot to see a show, to play a show. Yeah. So the barn at the Kalik Center, that's probably my favorite venue.
I would agree. My favorite non-venue venue.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel like the Champaign Urbana music scene could really do better?
Well, I think a lot of things.
I got that.
But and that's not to say I necessarily think all these things are things that need improvement, but after being a member, like a participating member of the music scene for like going on a decade or more now, and having a lot of friends who have done the same, musicians, we work really hard in a lot of different ways. I don't really know many, if any, musicians from here or who live here, who play here, who really make any money doing it to the extent where they're able to sustain themselves in any effective way. And so that's a very loaded thing to say, I realize, because like you can't just say, well, I think one thing I would do is pay musicians more, because it's like, well, how are you going to do that? So there's a lot of moving parts in a music scene. My point there is saying most musicians that I know, especially when you get to be in your mid to late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, you're going to have a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
So you're working 40 hours a week or so, whatever. And then on top of that, art is so much more than a full-time job in every way. It is your life. While you're at your full-time job, You're thinking about the art that you're going to make or you want to make when you get off of work. So you're working a full-time job. You get home from work, you're physically and mentally tired because you just worked the same amount that most other people in the country are working. And then on top of that, you're going to like try to collaborate, mix schedules, have time to devote to creating art that is worthwhile, not only for your own fulfillment, but also if you're going to share it with people by recording or playing shows. It just takes a lot of work. And then on top of it, it seems like in the last few years, there's a drought of people who are fans of music who are contributing in meaningful ways, if that makes sense. There doesn't seem to be a lot of music journalism. There doesn't seem to be a lot of people documenting shows, like whether it's photos or videos or reviews, promoting. Like a lot of times the promotion for shows is on the bands who are playing, who just spent a lot of extracurricular time practicing after they got off of their full-time job. I feel pretty exhausted a lot of the time. And so to speak hopefully constructively, critically, I think it could benefit from people being more involved in meaningful ways. And that's people who are fans of music, people who love music, who like going to shows, but don't necessarily know how to play an instrument or sing or write songs or whatever. I feel like there's so much room for the scene to not just be about the bands and the musicians in those bands, but there's so much room for creative writers or photographers or videographers. To your credit, Sven, that's why this podcast is it's just a really cool thing, but it's also very important because when you do something like this, musicians feel seen and heard and validated, and without that, you're just like in a vacuum kicking yourself in the face, Like I'm writing these songs and we're having these practices and we're playing these shows, and it's like, who is this for? It seems to be happening for like the other people who are in the other bands on the bill. And so like without some acknowledgement coming from outside sources, you kind of just feel like it becomes very whale masturbatory after a while.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I certainly want to make it clear that I do think shows are worthwhile. And I've played so many shows where it's just me and the other musicians, and it doesn't get me down, like I'm a musician, I'm an artist, like that's that's just what I do. It's not a choice as like, is this going to be worth it for me? Like it's what I do. I think about when people talk about music scenes, like I'm always kind of confused as to what people are speaking about exactly, because like it's easy to think about, well, what kind of bands are here, and are these bands making good music or not? But like the way I think of them, they're places that are like thriving, synergetic, communal bodies, right? Like where there are musicians and there are writers and there are fans of music. It all perpetuates itself, The more the bands are stoked because there's good turnout at the shows, the more the bands want to practice and like nail their shit.
Right.
It's exciting, But like if you have done shows for a decade and you're used to like, there's not going to be a lot of folks there, it just is what it is, then it's easy for bands to get complacent, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure that happens everywhere, Well, when we think about magical scenes, like I feel like music scenes are things we're aware of because of Haight-Ashbury in the 60s and CBGBs in New York in the 70s and Athens, Georgia in the 90s. Like we think about all these places and it's so romantic and they sound like these little utopias where all this creativity was blossoming, like for whatever reason. But like I feel like in a part of those scenes that we probably imagine is that there were people at those shows. Like maybe there weren't.
Right.
But and I like to think that there's probably somebody writing about the shows. That's why there can be books written about the New York scene, because it was all documented so well. But I think there could always be more of that. I think it's good for everybody. It makes fans of music who aren't musicians feel engaged. It's good to be engaged with your community in that way. It makes I just feel like it's a healthy thing. I think for a healthy scene, it shouldn't just be musicians playing for musicians. I would love to see more bands getting out of town. And that's a loaded thing too, because like, sure, it'd be nice. Everybody wants to. If I could be on the road, I'd be on the road right now, but it takes so much. Yeah. So it's not as easy as being like, oh yeah, bands get out there and tour. But I do think that a local scene benefits in so many ways from having bands from within go out. I think it benefits those bands, like individually, like just the individual lives of the band members improve because you're traveling, you're seeing new things, you're forced to play your music in a new context for strangers. I mean, it's terrifying and exhilarating and the best fucking thing ever. The bands benefit. Maybe because they go and they make more fans in some other place they haven't been before. Or maybe they go and drive 8 hours and they play in an empty room for the other musicians. And then you come home, you have a choice then. You come home like defeated, or do you come home and be like, I hope next time we go there, there's 5 people there.
Yeah.
And we want to be better, you know, or like, especially because, you know, a lot of times if a band makes it out of town to play some shows, whether it's 1 or 2 or 17 or whatever, it's a band that's at least taking themselves seriously enough that they're like, this is a worthwhile thing to do. Like, we're going to go play St. Louis or whatever. It's to be assumed then that they're doing pretty okay where they're from, maybe. Like, maybe when they play shows, people are excited. And they're having a good time, and that's what gives them the bright idea that we should go down the road and play some for these other people we don't know. But then you go and you realize nobody gives a shit about you. 2 hours away, you know, like nobody cares, and that can really, really hurt, and it can be really disorienting. But it can also be, it helps you zoom out and like understand your art in a new way. It kind of gives you just a wider, bigger perspective on what it is that you're doing. Like if you played a show for nobody in some other city, but you still feel the drive to do it again, then then you get to ask the question, like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And why is it important to me? And that's going to inform your art better. And you're going to probably make some more interesting art. If you go down the road and you're like, wow, those people really didn't seem to care. It's like, if you want to go back again, you're going to be like, well, we're going to play some stuff that even those fuckers are going to like, you know? So I think it helps. It helps the individuals and the bands, and it helps the bands. And I think the scene benefits when a band goes out on the road and makes friends from other places and then gets to say, hey, come see us sometime. Like, if you want to play in Champaign, Urbana, then you do that. And then, so it's just it's a network that feeds itself, because you want to play Tulsa, you make some friends in Tulsa, you tell those friends that they can come back and play in Champaign, Urbana, and before you know it, bands are touring through here that didn't before. It's a win-win. It's just it's a good thing. It's a healthy thing, I think, for a scene. So, and having booked tours before and stuff, and having lost plenty of money before, like it's not exactly a logical or rational thing to do in a capitalistic society, but I think if anyone's on the fence about whether or not they should do it, I just say, hey, do it. I think it'd be a good thing for everybody.
Champaign is also a band podcast, is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening. Located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Cole, what is your favorite non-musical thing?
Well, today we're celebrating Stag beer.
Stag beer, indeed. And I'm ready to enjoy to celebrate a little bit more. Just a second, let me. No, is there something that like just is your thing that like it doesn't specifically relate to music, but is, I mean, it could be to a certain extent musical, but it's just, you know, the thing that you do that's a little different. I mean, you said something about, you know, like camping and
yeah, sure,
you've done, but you know, something other than that, because I gave you that idea.
Yeah, other than the camping.
Yeah.
My favorite things are usually leaving town and going into the country. I guess it's all nature-related stuff, really, when I think about it. Whether it's jobs that I've had in the past, like my favorite jobs have been jobs where I'm working with the land. I just got back from 2 nights of camping in Indiana in a state park where we did hiking and we did cooking on the fire and all that stuff, walking with the dog. Like, one of my favorite places in the world that I've been is my family's farm in southern Illinois. If I have a free weekend, it usually crosses my mind, like, do I have enough time to go to the farm and come back before I have to work again? I kind of like the seclusion and the quiet and the bugs and the trees and the fishing, and like it all just fills me up in a really nice way, in a way that not really much else does. You know, music does, but it does it in its own different, special way. Being out in nature and being alone, I think, or, you know, with loved ones, you know, but really just the quiet, like getting away from the old hustle and bustle of things is probably my non-musical favorite thing. Yeah, I can't beat it.
Well, Cole, thank you so much for coming out and talking about your song, Never Been Dirty. For a second I was like, never been clean.
Either way.
Thank you for talking about your song, Never Been Dirty. Thanks for coming on.
Well, sure. Thank you, Sven. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Cole Bridges reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Urbana Studio, South Beaker on the inside.